Hi everybody. In this video, we're going to talk about how to do conversions of units when the units are not uh, switching from one metric unit to another. So we don't have that easy moving of a decimal place. All right, so when we're having to do conversions in this way, we want to, first of all, include the units for every measurement, and we can carry those units throughout the entire calculation. All right, so we're going to write out the units. And then essentially what we're going to do is we're going to multiply the original value by a ratio, a fraction, equal to 1. So in other words, when we make a conversion, we have to take it from one unit to the other by multiplying it by ratios that are equal to 1, things that aren't changing it in terms of uh, how much of whatever it is you have. All you're doing is changing the unit by which you're doing it. All right, so for example, I know that there are 60 minutes in an hour. All right, so my ratio might be 60 minutes over 1 hour because I know that 60 minutes and 1 hour are exactly the same thing. All right, so we want to make sure that we do that. So the example down here, it says 15 inches equals how many centimeters? So you have the 15 inches. You're multiplying by a ratio, a fraction, that's equal to 1. It turns out that 2.54 centimeters is the same thing as 1 inch. So make sure when you set this up that your conversion factors, the things that you multiply by, are always equal to 1. There's a couple useful conversion factors that we're going to talk about on the next slide. So we multiply the 15.0 by 2.54, and then we divide the whole thing by 1. That gives us 38.1 centimeters. So we're going to work through some examples like this in a moment, but before we do, I'd like you to write down these useful conversion factors and work on committing these to memory. It's going to be helpful for us to know these. So the first one is that 1 meter is 3.28 feet. All right, and if you remember, we talked about before, a meter is about the length of your leg. All right, so it's a little bit more than a yard. Okay, so 3.28 feet. 1 inch is 2.54 centimeters. All right, so if we think about an inch is about this big, a centimeter is about this big. So 2.54 centimeters makes up 1 inch. And then 1 kilogram is about 2.2 pounds. All right, 1 kilogram, 2.2 pounds. So just for your own kind of like mental math, for every kilogram, you kind of double it, double and then a little bit more is how many pounds you would have. Okay. All right, so those are some useful ones. Let's work through some examples, and I'm going to talk about how to set these things up. So our first example here is 37 kilograms equals how many pounds? All right, so first thing we need to do is pay attention to the units that we have. All right, we have kilograms and we need pounds. So we need a conversion factor that's going to get us from kilograms to pounds. Well, we know one. We learned that 1 kilogram equals 2.2 pounds. That was on the last slide. Okay, so what I'm going to do is write down 37 kilograms, and I'm going to multiply that by some fractions. Now, I always write the line, and then I'm going to write the units first. I think it's super important that we do units first. Don't worry about the numbers just yet. Let's think about units. When I am going from kilograms to pounds, I need to make sure that I get kilograms to cross out. All right, think about this. We're multiplying 37 by some fraction. So you can imagine this as being like 37 divided by 1. Okay, so the kilograms on the top. In order for me to cross out kilograms, to cancel them out, in my fraction over here, kilograms going to have to be on the bottom. That way I have one on the top, one on the bottom, and they'll cancel. So kilograms go on top, My pounds go, I said kilograms go on the top. They go on the bottom there. And pounds on the top. And then you put in the numbers that follow the conversion factor. So 1 kilogram, 2.2 pounds. When I multiply now, kilograms here and kilograms here are going to cancel out. All right, so I'm going to be left with the unit of pounds. So with my calculator, I'm going to do 37 times 2.2, and I get 81.4 on top. And it's pounds. And on the bottom, I just have 1 times 1. So my answer is 81.4 pounds. And so we're good there. Sorry, my handwriting here is not great. Okay, let's look at another example. All right, so this one says 6 days equals how many seconds? All right, so I'm going to write out 6 days. And I can write that over 1, like we said earlier. Okay, now, I don't know how many seconds are in a day, but I do know how many hours are in a day. All right, so maybe we start there. So if I have days on top, I need to make sure days are on the bottom here so that it cancels out. And let's put hours here. Okay, well, how many hours are in a day? We have to make sure that the top and bottom are the same thing, are equivalent. All right, so 24 hours in one day. But that's not it. If I just do that, I'll know how many hours I have in 6 days. I need to keep going. So I'm going to extend this out. Now I got to think about, now I have hours. Well, I need to get to seconds. All right, well, maybe you know how many seconds are in an hour, maybe not. But I do know how many minutes are in an hour. So what I can do is put minutes and hours. So I'm going to do hours here and minutes here. That way, the hours on top here cancel out with the hours on the bottom there, and I'll be left with minutes. I know there's 60 minutes in 1 hour. Top and bottom are equal. They're the same thing. Okay? And then the last step, we all know that there are 60 seconds in a minute. I'm going to put minutes on the bottom here. That way it cancels out with the minutes on top here. I don't want minutes, I want seconds. So we'll put seconds here. And I know there's 60 seconds in 1 minute. Okay, so if we take a look at this operation, I have 6 times 24 times 60 times 60. I'm going to do all of that in the calculator. So 6 times 24 times 60 times 60 again, 518,400. 518,400. This is seconds. And if I look at the bottom, I have 1 times 1 times 1 times 1. The whole thing's divided by 1. So my answer is 518,400 seconds. It's definitely tricky to write with this thing. Okay, let's do one last example. Okay, so let's look at this last example of 3.8 feet equals how many centimeters? Now, in this situation, we don't have a conversion factor that takes us directly from feet to centimeters. We have feet to meters, or we have inches to centimeters, but we don't have feet directly to centimeters. So we're going to have to do this in 2 stages. All right, and there's a couple different ways we can do it, but this way, the way I'm going to do it right now is I'm going to write out 3.8 feet divided by 1. And I'm going to multiply that by, write my fraction. I know that there is a conversion factor between meters and feet. So I'm going to write feet down here on the bottom because I know I need to get rid of that. And I'm going to put meters up top. Okay. So in every 1 meter, there's 3.28 feet. And if we multiply that, we'll get meters. But we don't want meters, we want centimeters. So we have one last step. Okay, I don't want meters, so I'm going to have to make sure the meters are on the bottom here so they cancel out with the top there. And I'm going to put centimeters up here. And then I have to think about how many centimeters are in a meter. Well, that's one of those ones we're supposed to memorize. All right, think about it. Centi means 1/100th. So there are 100 centimeters in 1 meter. Okay, think about it like cents in a dollar. There are 100 cents in a dollar. There are 100 centimeters in a meter. There are 100 years in a century. All right, that cent signifies 100. Okay. All right, so in this example, I have 3.8 times 100. So that's going to be 380 centimeters. And on the bottom, I have 1 times 3.28 times 1. So I have to divide this by 3.28. So 380 divided by 3.28, and that gives me 115.9 centimeters. So in this example, we ended up having a number on the top and a number that wasn't 1 on the bottom. In the first two examples, it was a 1 on the bottom. Here we had a number that was not 1. So before you finish, you got to make sure you divide these two things. So 380 divided by 3.28, and that gives me that 115.9. Okay, so going back to our examples here, or our notes here rather, make sure that every time you do it, set it up the same way, and make sure that your fractions, your ratios that you set up are always equal to 1. The thing on the top and the thing on the bottom are always the same thing. If you have a situation where the fraction is set up and the top and bottom are not the same thing, you're definitely not going to get the right answer. So pay attention to that and always think about what unit am I trying to get rid of and what unit do I need to end up with? And then you can set it up so that the units you're trying to get rid of always cancel out by having 1 on the top and 1 on the bottom. And the units you want to end up with are always at the top of that last fraction. All right, so that's going to give you the most success.